already established game world, making that first step into game development isn't always easy as you think it would be. It has a lot of many unexpected obstacles. So of course, I'm going to start with my story. I was born in the homeland of Minnesota, in the country where everything is always cold. And ever since I was young, I always had a knack for storytelling. I drew comics that were like 400 pages and just like pictures of stick figures. I wrote books that were also 400 pages. I really liked the number 400. But I also made videos and I just wrote a lot. So eventually I went to Webster University where I studied script writing. And it was there that I attended Lisa Brunette's narrative design class in gaming. And through that, I really realized my passion for storytelling, particularly in the game development genre. So much so that for one of her finals, I just made the entire game that I wrote and made, because why not, you know? Like, why not? And so after that game, I had the opportunity to do some editing work for Lisa. And since then, and that was a job I balanced as a contract worker for my senior year. And since then, these last few months, I've been working for Brunette Games full-time as like a full-fledged game designer writer. And our focus at Brunette Games is originating and designing stories and narrative. We don't just write, but we design and write. I drink a lot of water too, just be ready for that. So, I really found my calling here with Brunette Games. And some of the first jobs I had were G5's Jewels of Rome and Cherry Pick Games' My Spa Resort. So for Jewels of Rome, it was a pretty simple, starting job. I just edited their tutorial, and it also really taught me the importance of spreadsheet navigating and how easy it is to accidentally miss a tab in a bunch of dialogue. Not saying I dig that, but I also definitely dig that. So it's really paying attention to all these documents that you have to work with. And then came My Spa Resort, which was like my first really big job. It was my job to completely take all of their English text and kind of relocalize it and rewrite it with a bit new of design, new characterizations. And it was also my first chance to actually get to practice writing with a bunch of really unique character voices. Like you can tell just from the photo, there's just so many unique people on that photo. And it's just a big game with a lot of different personality. So then came a game called Homicide Squad. After a few various editing jobs, my first original writing experience was with Homicide Squad Hidden Crimes. And this game is developed by G5, much like Jewels of Rome. And G5 is one of our long-standing clients. Not only was it the first time I got to work really closely with G5, but Homicide Squad has also been the game I've worked on the most since this job. So just a little bit about Homicide Squad. The game takes place in New York City and follows two detectives as they solve crimes and cases all across the city. It's a hidden objects like finding game, where you just like, oh, tap, wow, look at that, it's a piece of tape. And there's just a lot of tasks, cases. It has that typical energy meter you see in a lot of mobile games right now. It's available on most devices. And this game is very frequently updated with a lot of new cases, usually involving murder. They just all involve murder. And each case introduces a new scene, a couple of new characters, and a really big thing they started doing were these things called time-limiting events, which were cases that pertained to like a particular season or holiday. Like they did one for Chinese New Year, just all that fun stuff. So this is where I got to know a case called Stepping Stone. So after editing a little bit, I had my first opportunity to write their spring time-limiting event. There's a case that came to be called Stepping Stone. It was my first opportunity to actually write originally in the industry. I was very excited and also very terrified, because why wouldn't you be? And as far as the writing process went, I was given a really in-depth murder case. And they gave me the background and kind of the lore of what happened, but it was my job to not just write it, but design it into a narrative that fluctuated through tasks and hidden objects and really bring these characters to life. It was also only the second time G5 outsourced the original writing to someone else, because usually they always like to do it in source. So, as essentially the story followed Bianca Nuri, and you kind of see her face right there. She walks into her own flower shop one day to find 3 dead bodies on the ground. Surprise, one of them is her long-lost dad that she thought died 20 years before he just now died. And he was looking for a priceless sapphire that he also hid in her shop 20 years before she thought he died the first time. So there was a lot going on, and writing for this meant that I was designing tasks, placemates, like figuring out what you had to find, and how that ties between the narrative and all the hidden objects. So going into this original writing piece, I had a lot of expectations, especially as a newbie coming into the game industry. Sometimes when young developers think about joining the game industry, we imagine pushing all of our ideas and creativity into fruition. We see it as an opportunity to unleash our creativity. We have expectations for what we're going to work on and develop, what worlds and characters we're going to create, what stories we're going to tell. But in reality, that's just not really how it works. You do the job that your clients give you. Your creativity has to be contained within that world. So when you work for a studio, you're making that studio's games. And those games might be really different than the games you've been fantasizing about for a lot of years. And a big part of that also just comes with genres. I mean, for a lot of us student game designers, we have expectations for what genres, these big fantasy, AAA RPGs. But in reality, a lot of money, it's all money focused. You're going to be working in the genre that's making money right now. And for Brunette Games, that's mobile games. So we specialize in a lot of these app mobile games, especially Match 3, Hidden Object. We've done some interactive novels. And it's kind of like a time when I was a student at Webster and we were told to each pitch a game that we wanted to develop. And all the students were doing either these really niche games that only appeal to a very small percentage of players, or these huge AAA quadrillion billion dollar budget games. And I was just over here in the corner pitching a Match 3, and people are like, what are you doing? You can do anything. I'm like, well, yeah, but this is what I do. So that's what I did. And so here I was, not writing an original world, but writing originally for a world. And that world was Homicide Squad. It had its own characters, its own setting, and my creativity had to fit within that. So the very first step of all of this was the characters. And at this point, my expectations were all over the place. And it was my first focus. And I started out with their two new characters. There's Bianca Marie, who I mentioned earlier, the owner of the flower shop. And she is a woman, who's kind of been struggling financially. She's the owner of the flower shop, but used to belong to her mom, and her mom more recently passed away. And then there was also an agent called Donald Connors, and he was a very old detective on the missing Sapphire case, and he was coming back to the shop, trying to find it again because he thought the Sapphire could save his gravely ill wife. But of course, 3 people get murdered, and everyone's like, hey, yo, what you doing there? But he was actually innocent, surprisingly. But aside from these new characters, they were really fun to write. I got to bring all new voices to them. The really first hurdle I encountered was the old existing characters. Their dynamics proved to be a challenge. I had to be an expert in how they interacted, their speaking voices, their backstories, and their histories. And that brings me to the faces of Homicide Squad, Detective Lamont on the left and Detective Sereno on the right. So these are the two, they're the faces of the game. You follow them through every case. They're the lead detectives that solve every murder. They're who you're always with. And G5 had very established characterizations for them. They had very specific ways they spoke and acted with each other. And going into this, G5 gave me a paragraph each on their personalities, but those very small paragraphs were weighted against numerous cases and dialogue between them. They've done so much more since they wrote those personalities. So Lamont is your very typical kind of more emotional centerpiece, but also very emotionally distant. He'll put all of his heart in the case, but even if he doesn't necessarily want to talk about himself or doing it, making his instincts very reliable. Serena, though, is a little bit more rash. She's never afraid to crack a joke, and she's kind of hot-headed. But it's her very rash impulses that give them the results they need and what they actually need to solve this case. So I knew if I was going to actually make Stepping Stone work, I had to nail these characters and nail their voices. Which led me to, the voices of their face. It came the very long process, unexpected process of just trying to master their voices. So almost like playing a detective myself, I just went through so many of their old characters, or cases, and I just read dialogue after dialogue, cutscene after cutscene, trying to really nail down what they say and how they say it. And I tried to just get the best sense of characters I possibly could for these people. And it was a really long process, but eventually I got the result I needed. Not only was I able to match their voices, but I did what every aspiring writer aims to do, and I brought them someplace new. Both Torino and the new characters, I realized, had lost parents and their backstories. So I took a new life to Torino, over there on the left, and I gave her like a sympathetic understanding of where Bianca's coming from, since Bianca recently lost her mother and now just her father. So all of her hot-headedness just kind of took a backseat to her trying to more emotionally understand the situation of the case. It was a take that still respected who Torino was, but also just giving her something new to do. And G5 really liked it. They liked this new depth I was able to give to her. And, it was a really big moment for Torino in this case. So after really nailing down their voices, I got to the actual writing, and then came the big moment, which was submission. So after my first draft, I passed it to Lisa, and eventually we passed it on to G5. And I was nervous. This was the first time I actually submitted original writing to a company. And suffice to say, it really didn't go as well as I had hoped. They didn't hate it, but there was just a lot of work I needed to do on it. And that's what brought me another really big lesson in the game industry, which is kind of revisions and iterations. The first submission is only the first stage in a long set of stages to like a final perfect piece. And I probably spent as much time revising this case as I did writing it. And honestly though, it's not just because it was my first case. That's just how it is with every piece of writing. This is a collaborative process, and meaning that there's just going to be a lot of iterations and a lot of people who want to see specific things happen. And a lot of problems with my first submission came down to the way I handled dialogue. So this game has two very specific kinds of dialogue. There's the regular cutscene dialogue, like on the left, where characters are just talking to each other, having a conversation, and then there's the mission briefings. And these are little like pieces of text characters say that display before and after a task. So like Torino will say, wow, we should find a flashlight. Then you find the flashlight, and she says, wow, we found that flashlight. But you actually write it much better than that, because that's really terrible. And I leaned way too heavily towards the dialogue and the cutscenes, because it was my understanding going into this that story happened through dialogue and interactions with each other. And this is where narrative design actually took a place, because I had to understand that there's a lot of ways in a game to tell story. And it's not just even through the mission briefings, it's through like the tasks they find, all these objects with stories. And so when I submitted it, I had a total of 18 cutscenes, all with over a dozen lines, and I was only allowed to have 9, with like 7 lines. So I had to cut out over half of my writing and my dialogue. But through designing this narrative and finding other places to put it, I actually didn't lose any of the story. So it wasn't what I expected, but it's a big part of designing narrative, and I was able to make it work. And eventually it came the finished product. I was happy with it. My company was happy with it. G5 was very happy with it, and I was really excited to see it in the game. And it was also, this stepping stone was the first step to a long-standing relationship with me and G5. Since then, I have edited like numerous cases for them, including this till death do us part case, which of course is about a wedding where someone, dies, because someone always has to die. And this is their most recent time-limited event, and I also picked the name till death do us part because I always insert in my editing as many puns as I possibly can. And whenever I think I go overboard, they just still love it anyway. So if you see a case with just a million puns, it was definitely one of mine. And so although I didn't write this case, I still had to kind of like localize and edit and help really bring out that designed narrative. And it turned out that all of my character preparation for Stepping Stone really paid off, because now I was the expert of these characters. I knew the kinds of things they would say. If I saw something in the writing that was like, wow, that character's just being a jerk, I could kind of be like, no, they wouldn't say that. They would say something different. So I kind of just became like, in a way, like the go-to person to make sure these characters are consistent with each other across all the cases. And this long-lasting partnership with G5 opened my eyes to another part of the industry I didn't expect, which is client relationships. Of course I knew that you had to work with clients, but I didn't realize just how big of a thing it is. It really went beyond my expectations, and it's one of the most crucial parts of the game industry. It's what drives the work much more than you ever think just first stepping into it. And it's just a lot more than you just do it and submit it. You have to work with these people constantly, back and forth, make sure these iterations are really what they want. And a big part that factors into these client relationships are reputation. G5 tested our work and proved that Brunette Games material just works better than their other material. It has more profit, it performs better. And in addition to that, we never missed a deadline. So a big focus here at Brunette Games in the last year that I've been a part of the company is that it's no longer just about Lisa Brunette being the best, it's about our studio as a whole being the best, and proving that we can make material that performs better. And so since then, since Homicide Squad, I've really tried to maintain healthy, positive relationships with my clients and prove to them yeah, I can give you better material than what you've seen before. I was proving to them that I can't just write, but I can also design their narratives. So a lot of this transition is how I wrote as a hobby compared to writing as a professional. I've been a part of Brunette Games for about a year now, and I've been working full-time for several months, and there are a lot of differences between working professionally and just writing for fun. So when I wrote in school as an assignment or a hobby, I could just basically write anything. If I wanted clams to take over the world, I could do it. In fact, I did do it. One of my whole books was about it, and I also made 12 animated cartoons about it, because why not? I could do whatever I wanted. And, there was little regards to required tone or theme. I could just write and be done with it. And, if I just wanted to kill off all my characters at the end, yeah, I'd just do it. The story's over, why not? But, I would just submit these things and just kind of expect the A because it was done. But now I'm a professional, and there's so many expectations beyond just that submission. When I started writing Stepping Stone, I really entered into professionalism. There's no grade or friends or family waiting to see my cartoons. It's really just only top-notch work. The clients already have set worlds and characters. They have stories they want to see happen, ones with very specific endings. And a big part of this too I never expected was budget. Budget is a big factor when you're writing. Like I said, there's a lot of students that picture these big AAA games, but you really have to make sure you can work and write within these limited budgets and time frames. Intense animations like dancing or just running around, some of that stuff is just a little bit too much. There was this one game I was working on where I kind of have this mysterious masked whodunit character, and it turned out that there just wasn't enough room in the budget to actually make this character visual. So I had to make sure anything, all the action happened off screen. It ended up working out really well in terms of suspense for the story, but you just have to be prepared to accommodate these changes. And it's a lot of what the hobby versus professionalism comes to is also art versus product. So when you're making something as an art, you just kind of, make it. It's your creative freedom to show off to people. But when you're making a product, it's about something that's profitable. And that's a big part of the industry. It's based on profit, and you're making things based on the sellable data that they've compiled. Industry is profit-driven, and hobby isn't. And now, it's not just me deciding what to write. I write what the job dictates. However, in a really strange way, through doing that, I'm also more creative than I ever used to be. Writing literally anything is a hobby. If I want to write clams take over the world, yeah, that's totally fine. But writing specifically for a client's need is where my real skill starts to show. So for example, when I talked about giving Torino this whole new sense with the compassion and losing their parents, that was a really creative thing to do within an already established world. And I was more proud of that than I was a lot of the other miscellaneous random stories I wrote. So even if I'm writing something I didn't necessarily consider myself wanting to write, I always strive to make it something I want to write. And that's a big step and lesson for the whole game industry as a world, is you might not always develop what you want, but you make it something you want to develop. So as a student, I wouldn't have imagined I would make it this far into the game industry at my age. I didn't even think I would be part of the game industry at my age. That's why I've always prioritized every design opportunity and always put Brunette Games first, because it's that dedication that just drives you up the ladder. So Brunette Games as a whole, Stepping Stone, it was just a lot of firsts for me. And I'm young, but I'm growing into becoming a real professional. And even now, by next year, I'm going to have 2 original apps out on the market with storylines and worlds that I actually got to create on my own, along with various Match 3 games I helped design the narrative of and really just enhance. And as I learned to accept my altering expectations of the game industry, I realized I truly am at home with my work. And that's also because I really do work at home. But I also, the work is what makes me feel at home. And so with that, I will pass this off to any questions you guys have. If you have anything you want to ask about my presentation or me as a whole, I'll pretend to have answers the best I can. So, anyone have any questions? Yeah, you in the back, ma'am. Yeah, so my name is Dexter Woltman. I am part of Brunette Games. You can see Lisa Brunette and Anthony Valterra over there work together, three-person studio right now. We focus on narrative design. Yes, Andy.
So it seems like every kid wants to create this ultimate AAA RPG $1 million game, and it's not super realistic. But do you have a passion project that you hope one day maybe to create?
Honestly, I always had a lot of passion projects going into it, but my writing also just split between a bunch of different forms. Either it was movies and books, and when it came to game design, my passions really, I think, were within the context that I've already been able to write. And I don't want to say every person has like this big, huge, triple like RPG design. Like, yeah, I would love to make a game about clams taking over the world. Like, of course, that's probably my passion project. But my really creativity is this stuff, and this is what I've really learned to love to do. Yeah, you're right there. I just pointed at like 3 people. Just look at me.
No, that's good.
I have not written for games, so what kind of format do you submit to your clients? Is it like a script for a movie or something
so
like that?
Our primary work is like just Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets. It's just really just these big, like, every game is formatted a little bit differently, but it's always within like columns and rows. So we might have a bunch of tabs here on the bottom, one for like cutscenes, tasks, and you'll just have from up here like characters, and you have to write, like, label their expressions, who's saying what to who. So it's very different from a movie design, and sometimes, it's not even like top down, it's like left to right, or even completely backwards. Every developer has their own way they like to do it. Sometimes, I know one game, I got to make the spreadsheet how I wanted it. It was very, kind of like a movie. You just go top to the down, but I still had to make sure the tasks were on one side in columns and that my writing was on another, also making room for characters.
What do you write for? Because you know what? Like when you write for yourself when you start off to be a hobby. So are you writing for high schools? Are you writing for people over the age of 65? Are you writing for middle-aged guys like you? In other words, when I said, there's a different audience. I mean, like this game. When you write for this game, I guess my question is, who do you have in mind?
Yeah, so a lot of our audiences will fluctuate. Brunette Games, a lot of our actual games and our primary audience is, though, kind of, about middle-aged women. It turns out they actually have a lot of profit in the industry. And sometimes that does change. Like, I did write a really kind of like graphic game for about like boys my age. But that's really where a lot of our niche is. It's just kind of those friendlier games that might appeal to older audiences. Yeah.
I have a question. So, like, can you give an example of, like, say, like, when you wrote something and you submitted it, and then they're like, oh, you need to change it to this. Is it like they don't like it's not witty enough, or like it's not in character enough, or like what type of revisions of like feedback are you getting for changes?
Oh yeah, there can be revisions of so many kinds. Like one time I was like giving a revision that like we like the characters in the story, but the world has to change. There has to be something more visual that people have a fun time looking at. Another time it was like character voices. Like when I picked up an older game and it was just kind of struggling to like kind of match some of those character voices. Lots of times the feedback is just like, wow, this has to be cut down a little bit, or we can't quite afford that animation, you have to rewrite it. Sometimes it's even just like the narrative arc, like they realize, maybe we don't want to introduce this character this early, we should hold them off another chapter. So it can really be any wide range of things. It's just whatever the developer notices that they want differently in their game. Yeah.
So you implied, maybe, that this is being translated into other languages. So I'm curious how, like, at what point within the pipeline that would happen. But I'm also curious in terms of the pipeline, does it start with the story and then the character arc comes in, or are you given character arc and you've got to map the story to the arc?
Yeah, so the answer I mean, the first part, the languages and stuff. That can also change. So lots of times we have gotten games that were written in a different language, rough translated to English, and then it's my job to actually localize it and kind of make it sound more natural. There have been other times, though, where I'm writing where they say this game is going to be translated to other languages later, so I have to make sure that the jokes I have and stuff are actually appealing to all cultures. Like, I can't just say witty things that are, like, US American understanding only. And for that second part, oh my god, what was the second part?
So in terms of pipeline, do they do you start with the story and then get the art and then do the
Yes.
voices and
So usually the very first thing is actually the world. They have a world first where it's like very specific. In our recent game we worked on that's actually out now is Sweet Escapes, and it's like a bunch of animals kind of working on like a sweets bakery and stuff. And then a lot of times from there you are making the characters that fit this world. They want to make sure they look good, animations, expressions, that it's visually appealing. That's almost one of the first parts. And then from there we take these characters and we make character personalities for them, and we give them arcs, and that kind of develops into grander narrative arcs. And sometimes it's a little bit reversed, and it'll be a little bit out of order than that, but that's usually how it goes. You really kind of start with the visual and go down from there. Yeah.
So like, when you're communicating with a client, do you ever use references? I'm curious how that works. Because the way that I work a lot of times with communicating with clients, use references sometimes as a way to communicate ideas and concepts that maybe they're easier to communicate via references than to try to explain.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
curious with narration, how you go about that.
Yeah, so actually, even going back to the last question a little bit, so there was this time I had to pitch like 3 different possible like storylines that they liked for a certain genre that they wanted. And through each one, though, I had to provide movie references, just regular cultural movie references, so they could kind of get what atmosphere I'm going for. And one time they were even like, hey, can you make this a bit more like Spider-Man kind of thing? Like, they will also use real-world references to kind of really nail down that writing. So yeah, it happens all the time.
Cool.
Anything else?
Yeah. Have you encountered anything that kind of struck you as, I wish I could do that, like someday in my career, and like kind of where you are right now? Do you have any advice for growing forward to those points?
I think a big part is you take the opportunities that you have when you have them, and you just grow towards them. You prove that you can do the smaller stuff first before you just try to jump into the big stuff. So first I proved I could do editing work, and then I proved I could do narrative design, and eventually came the moment I really wanted where I got to pitch an entire original world with like original characters and original storyline, because that was like my final goal. So you have to make sure you can work up that ladder and prove that you can still do the smaller parts in the ladder before you go full blown to like, this is what I want to do. Anything more? Yeah.
So how's it working for Brunette Games?
well, of course, I love working for Brunette Games. They got me a shirt. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, so it's been really cool. It's been really fun to just kind of see. Like I mentioned, about a year ago, it was just Lisa Brunette. Now we're a company with 3 people, and just kind of seeing that growth happen is really interesting. It's kind of like a mentorship / job where they help me with my writing, and I also write for them. And of course, I get to work from home, set my own schedule. It has a lot of benefits that I really love, and ultimately I'm just doing what I love, which is just writing characters, writing stories, everything I wanted. Yeah.
Speaking of working from home, are there any tricks or tips that you have that help you not get sidetracked or
Yes.
actually get your work done?
Yeah. So some days are better than others, but for the most part, I try to make sure that my workspace is separated from my fun space. So in my room, I have a private desk, like a little bit of a private office. I have a really nice plant that may or may not be dying. I'm keeping an eye on him, and that's just where I work. And I get up, and that's where I work. And then out in the living room is where I have my own assortment of games and just fun stuff. So it really helps to have a separate room where you're dedicated to work, and then other areas of the house or the home to just do what you do in your life. and trying your best just not to mix it. So I try, like when I'm sitting at that desk, I sit in that chair. When I'm off of work, I never sit in that chair. I don't sit at that desk. I do something completely different. Yeah.
So you had mentioned that the clients will give you feedback regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if, like, because you're writing for a different audience, that lessens like the impact that feedback might like have on you personally, or is there like some other trick that you can use to like separate yourself from the feedback?
I think the most important thing is that you really just fall in love with the product, or I mean, and especially the process of getting to that product, is that you don't always focus so much on what might end up. You just really love what's happening along the way. So yeah, there's a lot of times where you do have to change. I've been told I have to cut out like some of my favorite characters, or cut out like certain arcs that I really love. And you have to remember though that you are making this game for someone, and it's not just you saying everything you want. You're developing it for a studio. So you have to make sure that you are loving the process of going along. Like, I love pitching this stuff. Yeah, it might change a lot by the time of the final project, but yeah, it's just a lot of fun pitching these different things. And just don't ever take it personally. There might be a time where they're like, yeah, all of that's just like terrible. And you just have to kind of re-understand each other and re-communicate to make something they like. Because if you get too caught up on every little change, nothing will like progress or happen. You have to make sure you're working side by side with them to deliver what they want. And one thing that is really helpful too, though, is effectively communicating while you're going what they're okay with. So like we stop and be like, yeah, so you're still okay with this narrative arc happening, or like this character doing this. Just making sure your skill is unified as you can be. Yeah? All right, okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching my very creative slides. Give me a moment as I steal everything up here.
Yeah, it's on this side.
I just want to be sure that when I plug it in, it works right.
change it to educate partners, communities.
Oh, yeah,
And then,
yeah, that's probably.
and then this one is that.
I don't remember what the other one was.
It was basically the second half of this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, if you want water, you gotta get like
Oh, where's the fridge?
right around the corner. The fridge has a variety of things, but none of them. The sparkling water. Okay. You didn't always have this mic, did you? I don't remember you always having this mic.
I have the non-pro version.
Ah.
None go out volume with that.
Yeah, this is great. This will work really nicely. What up? These slides are not going to be quite as cool looking. There's just going to be some text.
They're at least in HD on the stream now.
That's good.
So let's huddle around the microphone.
Stand on one side. I don't know.
Yeah.
There. Perfect.
Cool.
No, that's good. We'll just stand on either side.
Of the mic? Yeah, sure. I figured we can just kind of like spitball off of each other's points.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I stop talking, you just start talking.
I have points. So.
And vice versa. Oh!
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But those are just for mine, not for yours.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Mr. Fence. Ready to go? Alright. Let's do it.
Hey, we're Fat Bard. We are two game audio, and sound design professionals. We're both homegrown here in St. Louis and got our start working with people right here in town. And we're going to talk about freelancing, and a lot of our anecdotes will have to do with kind of sound design related things just because that's what we're comfortable with, but they should be applicable to anybody who's interested in doing freelance, in general. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta do this.
Alright. So freelancing is not just a craft, it's also a business. And you really have to treat it as such. That's kind of where you go from being a hobbyist to professional. Much like what Dexter was talking about earlier. That leap, it's assumed that you have some talent, right? It's assumed that you're talented, and the next step in the way that you're going to be successful is actually more about business. I think as we've grown and time has went on, a lot of our focus on how to improve has been in a lot of ways more business related than
Business and
craft
marketing,
related.
yeah.
And so in that regard, it's sort of changed our attitude over time. You could be really good at something, but be a terrible business person. I went to a school of music where a lot of people coming out of it were not very successful, even though they were very talented because they did not have good business sense. And so you really have to have that mindset when you go into freelancing. Make sure that you are, getting put into good contracts. Working on your networking, working on your promotion, working on how your business is sort of presented.
Yeah. I mean, when we started this thing, I was a senior in high school, and I took classes when I went to college that would help me with like the skills that we use within the business itself. Certain like audio and composition-related classes, and certain marketing classes that helps kind of like frame kind of just our regular day-to-day stuff. Anyway, and it just kind of changed like our goals. We were able to kind of like evolve our business with our goals and change those goal posts as we met them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So big thing for us, especially nowadays, like Pat was saying, is keeping an entrepreneurial mindset. I think one of the biggest things that we did when we started out was the art to music thing. So basically what we did was we contacted artists whose work that we liked on Twitter or people that we liked locally, and we kind of created this project called Art to Music, Music to Art, where we each take an hour or less out of our day and we'll make a little music, 30-minute music clip. They'll make a piece of art to it, vice versa. And so the cool thing about it is we get to meet people by collaborating, and then we also get to share each other's fan bases and on social media when we share the work. We'll say, hey, we work with this artist, they retweet it. They say, hey, we work with these musicians, we retweet it. And then we start to build this like kind of artist collective where everybody's like working together, and then you meet people through those people that you're working with.
Yeah, it was easier to approach them because it was a low pressure, low stress sort of thing. You know? And because it wasn't a commercial work, right?
Right.
So we were able to approach people that were, I think, would have been sort of outside of our reaching zone on a professional level, but on sort of a, off to the side sort of level, we were able to reach them.
It was a similar working relationship to like when you do a game jam, which is another thing that helped us a lot, just kind of working with people for fun, but still doing something with a goal, with a finish line, and kind of working together to create something with people that you normally wouldn't get to work with. So I think that was a huge thing for us in the beginning. And branding and rebranding is probably the other thing. For us, it was helpful to have the Fat Bard as opposed to Patrick, Crecelius, and Zach Fendelman.
Those last names just roll off the tongue.
Right.
Crecelius.
And this is the second iteration of the Bard.
Technically it's third, but we don't talk about it first.
The first iteration was Eric Hibbler, who worked on Crash.
No, that was the well, yeah.
Well, the first of
the first official one.
It was cool to be able to work with somebody that we've worked with before to create a high quality image for our brand. And then later on, for this iteration, we worked with another artist that we worked on with a different game, and just because we had that working relationship, we were able to kind of communicate and get something that really worked for us.
Yeah, we already had a good working relationship, so we knew that we could communicate what we wanted effectively to them. So, using people that we have worked with to commission our branding, artwork, and stuff was a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
But we sort of continue to look for new angles, right? Like right now, we're doing this little Bard tip series or whatever, and it's a very effective way to grow our Twitter fan base or whatever. Not necessarily fan base, but just our our follower count on Twitter, which for better or for worse is important. But it is a thing. But yeah, that's been a good sort of promotional angle for us or whatever.
Yeah, basically doing little music tutorials. And they could be applicable to anybody can do them. And well, the thing that we do with the tutorials is we make them so anybody can just jump in and try things, even if they're not like incredibly musically inclined. I think that's what's mostly helpful.
Well, they're also 2 minutes long.
Right.
So they're very digestible.
Well, that's the funny thing is because of Twitter's 2-minute, 20-second video cap, we had to make them under. We couldn't just ramble for 5 minutes to get to the point. We had to.
If you put a YouTube link that's longer, or just a YouTube link in general, the click-through rate is like abysmally low. Like you will get like
click on a YouTube
20
video.
views. But if you put a video up on Twitter that's just directly uploaded, you will get way more views, way more interaction. People will actually bother to look at it. It's harder as audio people to get people to interact with your social media. Art is easily consumable on social media. You can just look at it, or even gameplay GIFs / GIFs, whatever. I'm going to say GIFs until I die. I don't care. But thank you. But yeah, so like it's so easily consumable. But when someone sees like a video and they know there's going to be audio, and like they're at work and they don't have headphones on, they're like, I want to click this, So it's trying to put less barriers of entry, basically, for people to like, digest what you've got. Your content you make is always helpful. So, even now we're working, new angles and stuff like that in terms of promoting ourselves. You kind of never stop doing it. Basically, is I think the point of what I was saying with the bar tips. We're still doing it now. We never stop.
We literally did one this morning.
Yeah, Zach made one this morning and posted. Anyway, value yourself no matter where you are in your career. Yeah, you can quote me on that. Picture my face with that quote, sort of like 50% opacity, and then the text, you know, was really good. But thank you for taking the picture, Rob. But anyways, so basically, no matter where you are, you should value yourself, and you need to keep reevaluating how you value yourself as you go along and value the time that's put into your work. But even if you're starting out, like you can't charge nothing. You know, there are always these talks on social media and other places about you know, exposure, right? And whether exposure is worth it, whether like that is something that is like a valid strategy, and sometimes is it worth taking you know, no payment to get something out of it, you know? But I mean, my attitude is that it's like never ever worth it. I think that
you can always ask for something.
Exactly. So it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be like cash. You know, it can just be something. You need to ask for something. It could be a barter deal. It could just be something. You need to value yourself. If you show people that you value yourself, then they're going to respect you more. You know, if you like, I don't want to work with someone that doesn't value themselves, because that shows me that they don't really believe in themselves in some ways. They don't believe in their craft. They don't believe their craft is worth.
Well, and you're not gonna expect them to meet the goals you need to meet because they don't have any incentive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like why, you know, is this person gonna meet, you know, it's like when someone says, oh, I'm up, you know, when you hire someone to do, this is a common scenario in the recording realms, because I used to do a lot of audio engineering for local bands around town. We'd be recording and I'd say, did you get your album art yet? Have you figured that out? Have you squared that away? And they're like, oh, my buddy Sam, he's gonna do the artwork, it's gonna be great. And then we're at the end of the recording process, we're mixing, mastering, it's basically done. I'm like, did you get the artwork done? They're like, you know, he said he's like halfway through, he's like, you know, he's just doing it as a friend or whatever. It's like, it never gets done on time, because it wasn't like, there was no value behind it, there's no value transaction, right? It's just some friend doing it, and it doesn't get done on time, like almost every single time because of that, you know?
One of the things that was kind of weird for us was, we always try to kind of reevaluate, you know, our worth, and we'll raise our rates every, you know, X amount of months or years.
Every 10 days.
Yeah, every 10 days. Every fortnight.
Yeah, every fortnight.
And we found that at a certain point when we started reaching a certain rate that we got more work.
Yes.
And we just assumed that it was because of this, because it just seemed like the work was more valuable. And our work, our like talent for what we were doing didn't really change. I mean, yes, we were progressing as artists, but just changing the dollar amount all of a sudden made the work more valuable, and people wanted it more, which was just very strange. But
sometimes you get a client that it's that mind game of, you know, what's your budget, what's your rate, what's your budget, what's your rate, you know, it's that back and forth thing where like there are some clients that will not believe you are professional if you don't charge a certain rate. This is the weirdest thing to say, but it's true. It's not often, but there are people like that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, sometimes we get a gig, you know, because we charge more, because they were like, oh, they must be professional or whatever, you know. But yeah, it is weird. But yeah, it's important to just constantly like reevaluate yourself, you know, figure out, you know, look at what other people charge. It's hard sometimes to get that from people, right? People don't like to talk about their rates. In the audio world, it's extremely secretive.
Yeah.
No one says, you can't ask anybody just flat out, like, what do you charge per minute? They'll be like,
I've had people message me though, and I'll just tell them flat, like.
yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like just are very secretive. I usually point people to a survey that was done at like Game SoundCon 2018 or something like that, and it's just like an anonymous survey, right? And you can see what people charge from that. And, you know, it usually, you know, it can be surprising to some people, especially if they're starting out and they don't think they can charge a certain amount. And I point them that and say, almost everyone charges at least this amount. You're like a tenth of that, you know. So I think it's important to survey your industry, see where you're at. But yeah, always value yourself even when you start out. You gotta ask for something.
Anyways. No matter where you are.
No matter where you are. Very important.
We've talked a little bit about this already, but don't be afraid to promote yourself, especially when you might not have work that like current professional work you're working on. If I don't have something like going on that day, like we just finished something or just like pipeline's dry for whatever reason, I'll send emails or whatever, but I'll also take the time to maybe update the demo reel or make a bard tip video. We'll do the Monday motivational thing. Or I'll just like watch YouTube videos and try to kind of improve my craft. And for me, I'll listen to music as work and just kind of like spend work time kind of analyzing things and seeing how I can apply them to what I do. And I think that stuff is just as valuable if you don't have current work that you should be working on. Spending time for productivity and kind of increasing your craft.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times if you follow people that are professionals in the game industry or whatever on Twitter or whatever, sometimes it seems like they just disappear for like a month or two, and then they come back and they're like, "This is the new thing I did, and check it out," or whatever. But it's important to sort of be more consistent with that. It doesn't matter what's going on. You always have something to show. But also the idea of promoting yourself in general. A lot of people, we're from the Midwest, right? We're humble people. We don't really like to be like, "Yeah, I'm pretty okay," It's hard to. You shouldn't obviously you shouldn't be just like over cocky or whatever. But you need to be confident about yourself, right, and about your skills. And it's okay to say that. And a lot of people have trouble, for example, accepting. What's the word I'm looking for? When someone says you're great. Compliments. That's the word. That's the word. What, where, But yeah, so a lot of people struggle with that, right? A lot of people that are young artists or just in any creative field sometimes struggle to take compliments. When someone says, you're doing so great, like this, that was awesome what you did. And they're like, yeah. Or they try to brush it off and be like, and what it does, it offends the person that complimented you, right? The person looks at you like, the person's a jerk. I just complimented them, and they sort of like it, because you end up kind of being awkward and sort of off-putting. And you don't always mean it, right? A lot of times we think we're doing one thing, but we end up doing something else outwardly to other people, right? So I used to do that a lot when I was a teenager. People would be like, "Oh, you're pretty good at guitar," and I'd be like, "Yeah, and I always sounded like a jerk. I didn't really realize it until someone was like, "Stop being a jerk. Just say thank you. Just say thank you, and it's fine."
And that's the nice thing about kind of spending time promoting yourself online is you can just be like, "Hey, look, I did this thing," and then you don't have to be off-putting about it. You can just say what you want to say, how you want to say it, and spend the work time to put in how exactly you want to say it.
True.
Curate your post or whatever, and all hashtags, which are important.
Yes.
And I don't know what. It's not funny.
Well, it's kind of annoying when
it is
posting
annoying.
hashtags.
It's funny to talk about it, but it actually makes a difference.
It does.
Yeah. We'll whenever we make these bar tip posts, we'll hashtag game dev, indie dev, whatever.
Every dev.
Anything that says dev, basically hashtagging it. And it shows up. People are looking at it.
Yeah. Definitely helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, take compliments, promote. When, where, what, how, why. When, how, and who to solicit, right? So the word solicit sort of has a evil connotation sometimes. It says, "I was solicited by this person who came to my door," right? My house, right? But solicitation is just part of freelancing. It is. It's just part of it. There's nothing you can do to avoid it. There are going to be times when you need to solicit. So when to solicit? Well, really any time. But when it's important to have what you call the infinite runway, right? If you're in a business, you always have to have something on the horizon. You cannot finish a bunch of jobs and then realize, I have nothing to do now. The well is dry. I have no prospects, because while you were working and doing that really awesome project or two, you forgot to find work for the future, right? So when is kind of really any time, but it is important to be very conscious of it as you're in the middle of some big projects that are going to end,
I think we're always looking 2-3 months in advance, basically.
Yeah.
See what we have coming up. Usually we at least try to have 2 to 3 working projects in a month that are giving us things, not just a project that gives us something once every 8 months or one that may or may not try to get something that we know is going to be a little bit more regular
Yeah.
in the coming months.
Yeah, this would depend on your profession and like how large your team is. There's a lot of factors in this, and like how many projects you can juggle at once and stuff like that, and how long your runway really needs to be or whatever.
For us, it's especially different because the game dev cycle could be anywhere from 6 to 8 months to 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And audio comes in, maybe
The last day.
yeah, like you're working like two months
Yeah.
out of that cycle.
Yeah.
And so for us, we need to juggle a ton of projects in order to
Yeah.
have some sort of sustainable business.
We can't have a project that goes for 2 years and that be the only project we have because we're actually only working 2 months max. You
Yeah.
know. So yeah, we have to juggle quite a few. It depends. Yeah, it depends on the turnaround, the expected turnaround, stuff like that, where you are in the dev cycle based off your profession.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of the when. How? So it is really important to try to. It is a numbers game, right? When you're soliciting people, it can be a numbers game, right? If you send out 20 solicitations, you'd be lucky if 1 or 2 people are going to respond back at times. Now, the more that you curate your solicitations, the more that you try to actually show that you put effort into it instead of just being like, hello, generic game dev name, whatever, Twitter handle. Like, I really liked your work on insert game name. Like you can't do that, right? It's really
Well, you
obvious.
can, but if you do that, you have to be really clever about it.
Yes. So we do use templates, right? I'm gonna say we use templates
You can't not.
for solicitations. Yeah, we will tweak them heavily for different projects, and we try to get clever about it. But in the end, like you can't send out a bunch of solicitations, just hand do every single one because it takes up too much time. But yeah, basically you want to try to personalize it. You want to you want to do research on a game. Basically, it's really, really important to actually look at the game. Don't just see something that has a cool GIF on Twitter and be like, I'm just going to send someone a message, right? Got sound? Need audio? Right? Like, you can't. You have to do research because like so many of these games will have audio personnel. You just don't see it. You don't always see it in the promotion, the sort of outward facing of the game or the developer or whatever.
A lot of those games will have it. They won't have it anywhere except in their press kit.
Yeah.
On their website, which is not linked through their Twitter.
Yeah.
It's only linked through their Facebook. You have to go.
Just some bizarre. You got to go down the rabbit hole. Basically,
Yeah.
it's important to. I mean, it doesn't take long. Just spend 5 minutes and just make sure that you're not just barking up the wrong tree, and it just makes you look like a jerk. You know what I mean? It just shows like I basically took no effort into looking at your game. It basically shows that you don't really know anything about the project. You just saw something that looked cool, had some good GIF game on social media, and then you send them a solicitation. Sometimes the how is less formal, right? Sometimes if it's you can send something that's a lot more sly, like in a Twitter DM or whatever.
Yeah.
I know we mentioned Twitter a lot, but
Well, we
it
got
is-
a lot of work from Twitter. That's what we do.
we definitely use it as a vehicle, not only to engage with other developers, but also to get work.
Yeah.
It's definitely a way to do that. But so basically you can be more formal, you can be less formal. You need to try to read the client a little bit and figure out what are they looking for, right? If the way that we're going to solicit like a hyper casual mobile company, Voodoo or something, right? It's going to like put out like 100 games a month or something like that. The way that we would approach them is very, very different than how we'd approach like just some small indie dev that has a really cool, promising project but doesn't really have a big following yet or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just you really have to cater to them. You got to think about what they're looking for. Yeah. But anyways, who to solicit? Well, that kind of follows that. You need to figure out where. I don't know. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I think it's important to understand like where your work stands in the professional world, and your work may be like amazing, but your marketing may be crap, and so people think that you're not that good. So you can only get these types of gigs. Well, try to get the best of those types of gigs that you can, and then kind of work your way up. And I think I'm going to mention Twitter again, but building your following kind of helps get those gigs too. And
Sure.
I feel like at least, so when I send out emails and I'm looking for people, I personally will look for people that have similar number following to us, just because from all the emails I've sent, the responses that I've gotten back are generally more for people who have closer followings to us and below, as opposed to like somebody with like 10, 15, 20,000 followers. And you compare that down, or apply that to any different scenario of people on different professional tiers. But basically, try to solicit people who are working on the same professional tier as you, or kind of adjacent. Don't try to like jump all the steps and just go straight to AAA or straight to whatever.
Well, you can't solicit AAA; it just doesn't work.
Right.
That's just a networking.
Or straight
thing.
to like.
Yeah, you can't go to big indies.
Yeah.
You can't go to like. There's not a whole lot of middle ground anymore.
Unless you know somebody.
This is true. Yes. So yeah, who to solicit? It just kind of depends where you're at, basically. But that kind of does go back to the previous talk talking about how who could be really anybody, because you can always make a project into something that's really cool and fun and a good challenge for you and a good point of a good opportunity for growth, basically. So like, we are not really picky, I guess I'll put it that way, in terms of projects, as long as it's a project that looks like something that would be fun for us to do and an opportunity for us.
Yeah.
But not just like in a way that wouldn't necessarily bring us up to the top or whatever, but just like a way to help us grow.
Yeah. Sometimes a project we assume it probably won't be like a smash hit, but it would be a great way to improve some certain skill set that we haven't had a chance to work on yet. Certain genre we haven't gotten a chance to work on, or whatever.
And if we can meet new developers and make new friends in the process, and
right.
and get paid in some way, then it's great. It's kind of a win-win for everybody. Always contract up.
Yeah. I guess we mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but when we first started out, we didn't work for free. We worked for just a small rev share deal for games, basically stating if this game, makes this amount of money, then we get X amount % from it, which is a really good way to start out, I think, if you feel like you can't charge whatever you want to charge like upfront. But contracts like save your butt every time. We don't work without contracts because it takes out all the guesswork. There's no questions about what happens if I want to take this piece of music or this piece of art and do something with it and give it to this person. It's all written out in there. All the deadlines, everything is just written out, and it just makes communication about whatever project you're working on just that much easier and just that much more efficient. I mean,
it's the fastest way to sour a relationship with anybody is to not have a contract. It's just never, ever a good idea. Even for like branding purposes, like if we have someone that's we're gonna commission someone to do some more artwork soon, and like we're gonna have a contract with them, stating exactly like what the purpose of it is and what we're using it for, and making sure that it's okay with them and everything like that. Just so it's just super duper important. And think about the, implications of it, like licensing. Are you licensing it? Is this a work for hire? Are you licensing it based off regions? Do you have extra sort of add-ons to your contracts? Are you prepared to amend the contract should certain conditions be met? You know what I mean? Are you prepared, if you're working with someone that's maybe like on the indie level, are you prepared contract-wise for a publisher to get involved? And if they get involved, how's the contract going to flex to sort of make that work, right? If you have a rev share in some way, shape, or form with someone you're working with, and they get a publishing deal, how is that going to affect things, right? Because publishers are obviously going to give money and need it to be recouped.
Yeah. One of the big things that we do is we'll seek out developers who are working on something, and they're kind of working towards a funding goal, whether it's through a publisher or Kickstarter. And so we'll have a contract that says, okay, well, we'll do kind of a discounted rate pre-funding. So it kind of helps the vertical slice. It kind of just makes everything kind of look that much better. And we'll just do a song or two, handful of sound effects, But if the game, if the funding goal is met, then in the contract it says, well, we will revise this. And so we come up with a new contract should that goal be met. And so having that fluidity has just been like super helpful for us in getting new projects.
Yeah, it helps a lot in that vertical slice situation, for sure. It always makes people feel better, basically.
Yeah.
That they're not like locked into a set thing. Like, it's definitely locked in that we have to keep working with them. They can't like fire us if they get publishing or whatever. But it helps ease their mind a little bit that things can be a little bit flexible because they're not 100% sure of their future. So, yeah, it's definitely important. Learn how your craft intersects with other disciplines. This is super important. One thing that we definitely bring to the table is that we know how audio fits into the game dev cycle. We know how it's going to interact and fit into engines, right? Game engines and stuff like that. So the way that we sort of learned a lot of that is just through working with other people that, are skilled at other things than us, right? So having to work with, the programmer on a game that's, putting in all the sound calls and the Unity and stuff like that. We can look at that and be like, oh, that's how you put a sound call in Unity. Okay, cool, got it. How different programmers have sort of assembled their own sort of custom audio engines for different, for stuff like Game Maker, for example, which has like just an awful, abysmal audio engine kind of built in. So you got to make a lot of scripts to sort of make it okay, but still not as good as like other engines. But you learn a lot from that. Or how art intersects with audio, right? Yep. And learning how you can put audio calls into like keyframes and animations and stuff like that, and when that's a good idea and when that's a bad idea and things like that. Where the audio calls should be, where they should be positioned on, what object should be emitting it, things like that. Just you just learn so much from working with people of other disciplines.
Yeah,
I've found.
Yeah, I think it helps kind of build up your own like side crafts too. Like, we built our own website using scripts and stuff like that, and just kind of positioning things and working with other professionals kind of teaches you how their process works. And you can apply it to certain things that you work on too.
Yeah, you learn a lot working with a whole bunch of different teams. You kind of, one of the values you have is that you sort of bring that to the table, right? So when people that are, especially with like people that are less experienced, like indie devs, a lot of times we can offer a lot of value outside of just making, music and sound design, right? For example, like someone we're working with right now is using Game Maker. And so we have a bunch of like stock scripts that we like to use. We sort of just like give them a bunch of different scripts to sort of help build up an audio engine that works for us, and that is going to help them a lot too, and make life a little bit easier for them. Being able to kind of just bring that to the table is super duper helpful. And bringing to the table the fact that we work with a bunch of different teams and seeing kind of what works and what doesn't always work, right?
Yeah.
And
you're just kind of bringing the knowledge of everything that you've done.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
So educate your clients, and this kind of
ties in
a little bit. The best thing that we've ever done is learn how to build a working vocabulary with the people we're working with. So learning kind of, they may not be musically inclined at all, or they may be musically inclined and have different ideas of the definitions of terms than you do. And so kind of talking with them and kind of having a conversation, feeling out their ideas on your craft is super helpful. The thing that we do pretty much every time now is we send references, we send audio references. Well, they're like, okay, well, I want this to sound intense. Okay, well, there's a lot of things that could be intense. So we'll send them, 5 levels of intensity, things that we would consider like different types of intensity. We'll talk in musical terms and explain those terms in the way that we know them. We'll say, okay, well, do you like the harmony of this in that blah, 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 or whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll just build a dialogue and a vocabulary vocabulary so we know what we're talking about when we're actually
Yeah.
in the thick of it.
Yeah, it's helpful for people that don't have that musical background. If you give them references and try to explain what's happening in musical terms, you're sort of imposing your vocabulary on them if they don't have a vocabulary.
Right.
But yeah, references definitely do work both ways. It used to be that clients would give us references, and we would just be like, okay. Sometimes we'd ask what they like about certain references, try to get more, they would explain the reference a little bit, but it wouldn't be clear enough to us, so we would come back to them and say, well, what exactly about this
Because
reference?
they might just like the little tiny thing about it
Yeah.
that you didn't even notice.
Yeah, so we might ask for better explanation or whatever, but nowadays it goes both ways. Sometimes they send us references. We almost always send references to them because it is so much easier than creating a pitch. If we spend a couple hours making a pitch and sending it to them saying, what do you think of this? And they're like, well, that wasn't even remotely in the direction I was thinking, right? That's such a waste of our time. So
Yeah.
sending them a reference to try to hit home a certain point is super useful.
Right.
So references can be a two-way street for sure. It is not just a one-way street from the client to you as the freelancer. You definitely should send them stuff too.
Yeah. Also, communicating deadlines and what needs to be met and when it needs to be met, and kind of figuring out if the developer is going to be gone for a month, you need to be able to get this thing done and stuff like that, and just making sure that you have a constant open dialogue that you can kind of figure out how to meet all these things.
Yeah, communication is everything. Yeah. It's just everything, and having that common vocabulary is very important.
Yeah. We always push our projects to go into Discord chats so that we can have just open communication, and
Yeah.
if we need to quickly get in touch with somebody, I find it's quicker than email. We can just
Well, yeah, it's brutal having 120 thread email.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing ever, especially when it starts showing the entire conversation rolling out, on every single email for some reason.
Yeah.
I still can't figure out how to not have that happen. But you can communicate so much quicker, and it's more conversational, and it's nice because you can just say, hey, can we just quickly talk, and just do use your mic and just do a voice chat real quick and just have literally a conversation with the person. Knowing people's time zones is really important. As silly as that might sound, it's very, very important depending on who you work with to understand their time zones and the time frame at which you can actually communicate with them. You don't want to get caught in this weird thing where you say something and then 12 hours later they respond, and then 12 hours later now you respond. It just goes back and forth like that. It's hard to make deadlines if your communication is going to be like that. So you try to accommodate them typically. Sometimes we have to have a late night conversation or a very early morning conversation or something like that. It helps that our schedules are slightly staggered, where I get up a little bit earlier than Zach and he stays up a little bit later than me.
Yeah.
So we can always kind of talk to him. Foster friendships as opposed to just making connections. So when we go to conventions, we go to GDC each year because it's almost always worth it for us in sometimes an intangible
And we do it
way.
on the super cheap.
We also do it very cheaply. We keep considering either buying a pass.
Yeah.
But anyways, basically when we go to these things, we are not hard networking. We're not just handing everybody our business cards and stuff like that. We are just meeting up with the people that we already know, developers that we've worked with that we haven't met in person before, people that we have met multiple times, multiple different years at GDC or just at other places or whatever. And what we do is we're just talking to them. We just kind of hang out with them. We always meet new people that way. It's a very natural way of networking that's not so sleazy and weird. The first year I went to GDC, I remember I was at this party thing, and someone that was fairly young, looked like they were in college or something like that. They brought business cards, and I was talking to someone, and this person just approached both of us and just said, "Hey, how you doing? My name's blah." And they just handed the card out, and I didn't even talk to them yet. I have no idea who they are. I don't know what they're about, and they just kind of interrupted the conversation I was in. I was like, this is the worst way to try to network,
Yeah.
We found that just talking to people and then naturally through conversation meeting other people, is a great way to sort of build up a network.
Well, it helps to kind of just talk with people online very casually, comment on something they post about, and then when you have the opportunity to meet with them in person, just be like, hey, you're going to be at the same place as me. Let's just say hi for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of the friendships that we've had just kind of blossom, and,
Yeah.
and you kind of realize that you like each other, and you just kind of hang out the rest of the day, and then you meet their friends, and you just kind of like build this network of friendships. You're not like just hoping that like you'll get the opportunity to like pounce on a gig or something. You're just like relaxed. You can have a conversation, and in that way, you're almost guaranteed to get more opportunities because they see like you're an actual person.
Yeah, that always helps.
Yeah.
But well, and it's a two-way street, right? So you meet someone and you sort of continue talking to them online or whatever after you meet them in person at a convention or something like that. They don't live where you live, and like situation could come up where like they're a good fit for something that comes your way. So you throw them something, It doesn't have to be this thing where you always have to get something out of somebody, right? You can if you look at it more as trying to sort of build relationships and friendships, then it's, you can give things to them. They can give things to you. And it doesn't matter whether either of those really happen in the end. It's great if they do, if those opportunities come up, but they don't have to. It's fine. We've gotten the most bizarre connecting gigs before where it's just like somebody that we had talked to before that, we'd never done business with, like knew somebody who knew somebody, and then we got a gig through that or something like that,
Yeah.
So, trying not to be too aggressive is really good. Audio people especially have like a bad stigma.
Yeah.
We are really bad at finding work and soliciting and stuff like that. Pretty much anytime anybody...
Shameless would be good.
Shameless, yeah. Yeah, usually when we talk to developers, the one complaint they get about people trying to contact them, right, is almost always like audio. It's audio people that are the most like annoying. They get a million emails from different audio people who didn't research the project, who know nothing about it, send a really really bland email or whatever, or direct message.
So on the flip side, a lot of the projects that we get are just through friendships.
Yeah.
Especially like a game that we've already worked on. We've kind of built a relationship with them and a friendship throughout that process. And they're like, oh, hey, I love these guys, and I know this other person who's working on a thing, and they'd be perfect for it. And it's just kind of how it's worked a lot of the time for us.
Yeah, you rarely get referrals because someone's like, I really like how very, very...
I love your demo reel, and this person would be...
Yeah. Or if someone's going to give you a referral, they're not going to give you a referral because you're just like, this really just like, you're just like this soulless thing that just makes stuff, it's because they like your work, but they also like working with you, and talking to you,
Yeah.
and they like the communication. So yeah, that's one way definitely to approach stuff, If you go to conventions, stickers, not business cards, by the way.
Stickers are great.
Stickers are where it's at. If you got good branding, you got a big fat bard, and it looks real. He's like, that's Dream Daddy bard right now.
Yeah.
And it's like you get a sticker of that, people want that. They want to throw it on things, and it's just a subtle nod, instead of handing a business card. And I mean, our name is on it. It's like we don't even put our website because like you're not going to find anything else if you type that in. You know what I mean? You're going to find us. So if people want to find us, they can find us, And if they don't, they got a cool sticker. So it's all good.
Stay organized. This is something I wanted to talk about. I don't think I told you, but one thing that I did recently that I really enjoyed. So we've been on like a productivity kick, just trying to make things go faster for us and just be more organized. And one thing that I did recently was I reordered the default settings that show up when you open File Explorer. So it shows most recent date modified, file size and file type and name, and that's it. So I don't have to like drag it over and click all the
That's
things.
exactly what I've done for years. I probably should have
told me, but I figured it out. But it's like little tricks like that that just kind of help make things go faster and can get you to your actual work quicker. Are just so helpful because you don't have to spend all this time just like banging your head against your desk, like trying to get the thing to work because it already works. We work in the cloud, and so everything is pretty much in Google Drive. And so we urge all of our clients to do Google Drive, even if they may normally do Dropbox or something, just so that we can have everything. And if they only do Dropbox, we'll do that too. But we try to make sure that everything in the folder is labeled clearly. All the file names they make sense. It's not
naming conventions are
naming conventions, and it's different for every
sound 1.
Yeah.
_2.
Um, yeah, and something that we do is we have our own personal Fat Bar Discord chat with different categories, marketing.
It's not just a rolling single channel conversation.
We have a general chat, but we have one that's like for marketing. We have one that's like potential games that we want to work on, where we just see something on Twitter, drop in a link, and then eventually we'll go back, look at it, email them, stuff like that, just so that we can kind of quickly look through and kind of just work faster just by understanding what's going on.
That's part of the it's a business and not just a craft sort of thing. Like, I mean, it's amazing how much time we spend not doing audio. Like, you know, a large percentage of your job is just like organization and communication, and it's really important. Like, it's not sexy to do lots of spreadsheets, but we do a lot of spreadsheets. Like, you just need to do it. You got to make a quote for somebody. You got to make an asset list. It's just a thing, you know. And that's where researching those, you know, productivity tools is really important. Just try to like keep on top of it and have it not just eat up your time, right? But it's, you know, eventually you like it, and like you figure out some cool trick, you know.
Like an organizational high.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah. Like we used nowadays we're using like auto hotkey with our software to try to like really maximize, like all my keyboard shortcuts are just like literally in one little spot and they're all just single keys, you know. So I'm just like, you know, I'm like you know, one of those like evil computer dudes in a movie where he's like, I'm gonna hack the world, and he just gets out a keyboard and just goes like on some weird pad, you know. It's where I'm at now, and like it's, you know, every time it comes with like a new one, like it came with the new one recently to share with you, but I was like, yes, that's gonna save me so much time, you know. It's like you get excited about that stuff.
Well,
like,
because it just puts you further. It just makes it so you get to your work quicker.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's not as sexy as doing the actual like content making, but it is really important, if not just as important, to do it as a business. Yeah.
Anyways, this kind of follows out a little bit. Like, so we used to care a lot more about like what the newest sounds were, plugins, etc. Like, we just do not care anymore. Like, we do not.
We just have everything we need.
Yeah, we're lucky that we've gotten to that. But at the same time,
but I
like,
mean, there's always more.
Yeah, there's
better
always
stuff,
more, right?
But
yeah, there's
like,
a never-ending supply.
It's really like whatever you know the best is what works for you. And
yeah, we've gotten to the point where we're very comfortable with the stuff that we have. We feel like we know it pretty well, and all we really care about now is just like learning new stuff and getting new tools that will help us work more efficiently and faster.
With the stuff that we already have.
Yeah, exactly. So like, we just don't care. Whenever someone asks us like what software we use and all that stuff.
What's the wrong question?
It's the wrong, it's the wrong question to ask. But that's kind of where if we're trying to, you know, if we take a day or a few hours to sort of like improve ourselves, then this is what we're going to be doing. We're not going to be looking up like the newest thing or a review on some, you know, we're not going to like forums to look up a review on like, I don't know, a piece of audio gear or whatever. Just don't care. It's not important. You know, there are people that have worked on really cool games and made really cool soundtracks with very minimal stuff. You really don't need that much to like get going and to make it work.
Yeah, we did our breakthrough game using stock preset stuff for Pro Tools.
Yeah, which is worse than most other software like Logic's. Yeah, it's like Pro Tools it says the word pro, but all the stuff that comes with it is actually like really underwhelming. It's the software itself and the ease of editing and stuff is really great. But like the actual things that come with it, like the extra sound stuff, are just like really not good. Yeah. But we made it work, and it didn't really matter. People care way more. We get emails asking for like, you know, we just got one like 2 days ago. Someone else, you know, asking for a score. They said, can you give me the sheet music to the main theme of Crashlands or whatever? It's like, okay, you know. But like I listened back to that, I'm like, these are the worst sounds ever, like compared to what we could do now. Yeah. But it's fine. Like it's, you know, it was memorable and it worked. We made it work. But yeah, that's the basic gist of that, you know.
All right, this is the last slide, and then we'll do Q&A. Review, revamp your strategies. We've definitely touched on this pretty much the whole conversation, but just kind of like understanding where you are professionally and where you want to be, moving your goals once you've met them, and kind of updating your kind of productivity and all that stuff. It's just super important to not stagnate. You just need to make sure that you're kind of constantly moving, in all aspects of your business, whether it's your actual craft or the marketing or the productivity.
Yeah,
stuff.
you could never rest on your laurels. Just be like, we made it, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, you always have to review. I mean, this is what companies do, quarterly reviews, right? You got to review yourself no matter what. Every now and then we'll just have a conversation. Like one of us will just bring up, why don't we change this? Or like, why are we still doing this thing this way, right?
And sometimes the other person is like, well, because of this, and that's dumb. And we're
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, you're right. Or
Yeah.
sometimes we're like, oh, well, actually, yeah, that would be a good idea. Let's try it.
Yeah. But it's always good to bring up those conversations, even if they don't lead to something, some change in strategy or whatever.
Yeah, but just constantly questioning and seeing what could be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying different, like we've used that with going back to Twitter, going back to social media strategies, right? Trying to figure out like how can we improve our social media game. You just have to test things sometimes because the algorithms are constantly changing for that. It's really, really hard to look up some articles like this is how you do this on social media,
Only
right? 'Cause-
post on Wednesdays at 5 a.m.
Yeah. You know, we've kind of figured out a time frame and a scheduling of posting like works for us. After like trying a couple different strategies, we sort of figured out one that worked. But who knows? Like 3 months from now, we might be like, that was complete garbage, and we figured out an even better one. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important to just kind of continuously do that. That's just part of being a business again, as opposed to the professional side as opposed to a hobby side, right?
Yeah.
That kind of attitude. But anyways, yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. So we're totally open to any questions that you might have about anything, really. Yes.
How did you both meet and get started related to your musical experience?
Well, I still play in bands, but I used to play in bands in high school, and Pat was recording bands in high school, and so it was kind of a match made in heaven.
I was recording bands out of college.
Well,
recording high
yes.
school bands.
He was recording high school
Yes.
bands, and well, you were basically it was through a friend of a friend that I met him, and I kind of went back to him throughout different projects that I had, and eventually it was time to go to college, and I was like, I want to write music for ringtones. That'll make me money. And he was like, no, it won't, but you should try games. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that. And he's like, you were just
Well, I'll do it with you.
Yeah. And it's just basically that.
Yeah.
So we kind of formed the company my senior year of high school with the intention that when I graduated college, I would be working full time. And so we kind of, all of our goals were kind of revolving around those ideas. But yeah, we basically kind of met through music and audio.
Yeah.
The early stages, how did you guys, I guess you have to like cold call people to like present your thing. Did you guys make like a demo of songs in various styles?
Yes. Yeah. So we had a portfolio reel of varying styles. That was pretty much the first thing we did.
Yeah, we used to do genre playlists of different things that we've done. Now we just have a single one and like different things, but I don't know if you wanted to talk about it or.
Yeah, I mean, we built up a portfolio reel of different styles of genres. Eventually, we had multiple reels. Each one was a different genre, and we had like a couple songs that were sort of a couple of different varying songs. Like we had one called Action and Battle, and we just had a variety of things. It wasn't just like cheesy AAA orchestral battle music or whatever. It was there were other things.
But we basically look at the project, kind of do some guesswork on what they might want. Say, hey, you might want this or this, and we have some things that do both of those.
And we would just throw links directly to the song itself in the email. And we wouldn't make the list too long.
Right.
Maybe like 3 songs and be like, here's 3 songs that might sort of be up your alley, stuff that we've done to show that we can do, potentially the type of genre or whatever that you're looking for.
But now since we've gotten quite a bit of work from the beginning, we just recently made kind of an all-encompassing demo reel that showcases games that we've done sound and music for, so we can show kind of the whole package at the same time, which is a little bit more appealing to listen to. And we just send them that link, and then and that's a video, and then another video that just showcases specifically sound effects. And those 2 things pretty much cover everything. And then we say, if you're still looking for more, here's our other stuff that you can kind of.
It gets easier as it goes along, but starting out, one thing you could do is do something like that, but do it with like game jams, right? to do game jams. We were releasing albums, but they were just like they were game jams, like 3-song whatever, and be like, we came out with a new soundtrack, you know, for this game, whatever, right? And always sort of try to positively present it. And you know, and then if you sort of build that up, and then you could even use some of that. You could make like a video that has like, you know, gameplay with the music from that game jam. Just do like a bunch of them like that. Do a bunch of game jams and have like 5 things and just show them in a row in a video, you know, and it looks a lot more impressive, you know. Trying to tie it to something, and it looks better than if you just rescored something. A lot of people do that, where they take an existing game and they put new music over it they made, right? And to me, that's always like a bad call, because it's really usually a lot of people aim too high.
Yeah.
Someone did one for Doom, the new Doom, right? Which had a very like standout soundtrack, like it's so well gelled with the gameplay and everything. And they tried to do something that was very similar, actually, but just not as good, because they're not Mick Gordon or whatever his name is. You know, and so it was just like a bad call. You know, I just wouldn't do that. It's better to do game jams, because not only do you get to showcase something that people haven't seen, right? And is, you know, almost always going to be inferior to the final product, right? You get to have the experience of doing a game jam, right? Having games under your belt and meeting people and networking, and you know, it's just so much better to just make stuff through game jams, because your game jams are great, because if you have no experience, you can just show up and you get to make a game and you get to do exactly what you want to do. You know, that's how we started out. We did a whole bunch of game jams. We did tons of we did all the St. Louis game jams. We did 6 games in one global game jam. Brought our desktop computers, sat at the table, and we worked each on like 3 different projects. We just hammered it out over the weekend.
And then we released a bunch of music online that we could put in portfolio pieces to help our soliciting. So the portfolio eventually becomes a means to fill in the gaps, basically. Like we'd say, oh, we don't have like just a straight up like death metal song, so Zach like made a metal song, right? Stuff like that. We epic orchestral, I think you labeled one of them. So we're like, we need something that's like that epic orchestral, like trailer kind of sound. We don't have that because we never did like an epic orchestral trailer, right? So I would say game jams and portfolios and reels and stuff like that. So it really helps a lot to have something that you can show that is a game, even if it's like even if the game jam didn't work out the way that nobody, like the whole team, it didn't quite work out the way you wanted or whatever, like it's still a game, and it's still very presentable. Yes, Wes?
Do you guys work a like standard 40-hour week, or like what is your schedule?
Our schedules are both different. So I teach guitar lessons. I basically juggle different jobs, and I always have. Doing a career in music it's not easy to just put all your eggs in one basket, especially when you get out of school. It's really, really hard to just pick one thing and just make it work. And so I used to do audio engineering and teaching and playing gigs, and I dropped the gigs for the most part because the hours were not conducive for having like a wife and a kid, working late hours. And then I have more recently, like I slowed down audio engineering and recording bands as the game stuff kind of went up, and now it's sort of been a natural evolution. I don't do the audio engineering anymore. And now I still teach about 25 students a week, half-hour lessons, and then I do game stuff the rest of the time. But I probably work 6 hours a day on games, 5-6 hours probably.
That's about
5 days a week.
But that's all I do. I just, but I don't have, I rent, and I don't have.
He doesn't have 3 children.
Right.
He has to pay for it.
So I work about 5-6 hours a day on average. Could go more, could go less. But I always try to get like 2 things done a day, whether that's like a pitch, or finishing a song, and a handful of sound effects, or any combination of whatever. I just try to like get 2 things done a day, so that I'm constantly working towards like whatever goals that we need to be met. And I don't really put like an hour limit on myself. I just kind of make sure that things are done, and I'm satisfied when I walk away with it.
Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind is that those hours we're talking about are not just always making content, right? Like I will spend 2 hours in a day just communicating with clients or working on spreadsheets or just like whatever. Just like I said, the not sexy stuff, Like that's okay. That's just part of the gig. But yeah, about those hours, I guess. Pat, right? Yes.
So you mentioned contracts before. Do you guys have a lawyer? that you hire, or is that like a per contract thing, or how does that work?
The easiest thing you can do is make a contract and have a lawyer look at it, and then be done. Just make like basically a template contract that is going to cover you for most situations, and you might modify it for various reasons and stuff like that. If you modify it, you want to make sure the wording is good and consistent with like the legalese that's like in the contract, right?
Our contract's pretty short too. Like it's like 2 pages plus like signature page.
It's 3, but the third page is just a bunch of generic stuff that kind of just has to be in any contract.
But it's it's been pretty foolproof, through our working.
Yeah.
And so you can it's been nice for me to just like be able to read through it very quickly and understand everything and not have to like flip through this like 10-page thing.
Yeah.
And it still works for pretty much every application that we've done, minus like other things that would require us to sign their own contracts.
Yeah. There are cases where we work with the publisher that says, okay, well the contract you have with the developer before the publishing deal is basically just like negated, and now you need to sign a contract with us as the publisher.
Yeah.
For various reasons, but basically having like a template and getting someone to look at it is probably a good idea. But past that, you don't necessarily have to do as long as it's not going to be some huge modification of the contract. It's a lot of money to hire a lawyer for every single contract, especially if it's something that's a very similar situation to a prior gig. You know what I mean? So I would say you don't necessarily need to pass the initial one. Yeah. What's up?
How's the dynamic between you two with like who does what creatively and
It's a good question.
jump on games and stuff?
We try to split things as evenly as possible.
Yeah. I think it has changed, but in the last, I think, year or two, definitely things got very, very even.
Yeah.
It used to be that I did all the sound design, and we basically split music in half for the most part. And a big part of that was because you were still in school.
Right.
And you had to do a lot of other things. Once you got out of college, though, the balance sort of changed more and more. And
well, it allowed us to take on more work too.
Oh yeah. And we had a lot of opportunities to kind of get have you cut your teeth in sound design too, right?
Yeah.
And progress really fast, actually. We do some freelancing with another audio company.
We're basically ghostwriting audio for the company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our contract is that we, as Fat Bard, work with them, but we're not credited, but we can say we worked on it.
Yeah. But yeah, we
we
pretty
got
much split the workload. And
yeah. But those projects have been really good to just slam down tons of sound design, and yeah. But it's definitely grown to the point where we just split everything.
Sometimes if like something is a little bit more creatively in somebody's field, like they'll take the lead on it, but we'll still split up the work. They'll just set the direction.
Yeah, a lot of times when a project starts, we try to. That's kind of where maybe we try to figure out who is gonna sort of set the direction.
Yeah.
Like just today, we have something where it's a metal synth sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe like industrial metal.
It's industrial metal.
Yeah, okay, it's industrial metal.
If you want to get technical about it.
I want to make it sound something different. But Zach was definitely more suited to do that. So he did the musical, the first sort of musical song to kind of really set the direction of the game.
Yeah, and then Pat can come in when he wants to do the next song, and all he has to do is import all the sounds and then change it to,
Yeah, it gives me a good starting template to work from. I can take his song and just use all the same instruments, and I might change it after that. You know, I mean, it's not like I'm just committed to exactly whatever he did, but it gives me a starting point to work with where I know I can sort of match the sounds he had if I want to.
Yeah.
And also lets me, and I can just go into sessions to figure out what he was doing. That always helps too. Just be like, how did he make it sound like that or whatever? I can just go in and look at it and then sort of figure out how to make my song also be cohesive, essentially. Yeah.
Time for one more question.
Sure.
What musical instruments are in your forte when you make games?
Play guitar.
We both play guitar.
Yeah.
We both play keyboard. I took piano lessons. You took piano in college?
Yeah, I took, a couple of semesters of private, some class piano in college. Mostly just guitar, and a lot of the stuff that we do is like software instruments, like samples. Like we have strings and like winds and brass and all that stuff, and weird synthesizers. It's a lot. I use a lot of synths nowadays. I'm just kind of like, I do a lot of learning about synthesizer techniques and stuff, and so I try to incorporate that stuff. And then, you know, if the project calls for it, I'll plug in a guitar or something like that. But mostly it's kind of in the box in the computer with samples.
Yeah. I mean, I can play ukulele and bass. You can play bass.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
sometimes I just kind of choose to use a synth bass because
Yeah.
I like it better.
I mean, we can both sing.
Yeah.
You know, I can sing okay. Zach can sing very well in the style that he sings. But, you know, I don't know. Yeah. We're not like, we don't know how to play like a million different instruments, basically. If you know how to play the keyboard, piano, you can basically play every instrument if you're working with software, basically. And that's what ends up being called for a lot of times in games, because you don't have the budget to hire like an orchestra or, you know,
Even a chamber ensemble or like
yeah.
a little four-piece whatever. Like,
yeah, or even someone to play drums.
Yeah.
You know, so being able to being proficient with the keyboard is like a must. You have to know how to use that.
Yeah.
Sometimes people like pencil in notes, like they're like the original band that he was in when I met him was this guy Lewis, and he penciled in all the notes.
Oh yeah.
He just like double clicked in like the MIDI roll, like he just like adding, it was like doot, 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 you know. And like it works. There's a lot of people that actually are like can make legitimately very good music that way, but it's not efficient at all. It takes forever.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a different way of writing. It sort of changes how you compose. So it's kind of limiting in that regard.
Yeah. A little trick I do is I'm not like a crazy good piano player. Like I can play chords and like maybe a little melody. But if I know the rhythm of something that I want, I'll just like plunk it out on the completely wrong notes just to get like the velocity and like the rhythm that I want, and then just like drag it to the notes that I actually want.
Yeah.
So it's like it's this exact rhythm and
Yeah.
feel, but just like now it's on the right notes and not just like.
There's a lot of hacky things you can do where you play things like really not great, but then you kind of fix it later into what you want. That's almost like vocalizing. You know, you're like da 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 da, and then you try to figure out like where that is. You know, and then you play that or whatever. You know, it's like, you know, just slamming the keyboard.
Yep.
But yeah, you got to be good with keyboard. But we also play guitar basically.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks so much.
Before you all eat home in your fish tubes, those of you that don't get that, I'm really excited for you to Google it and find out. Oh, fish tube. Google it, fish tubes. Eat. I totally forgot what I was going to say now because of that. Oh yeah, can we thank Riot for hosting us tonight? Thank you, Riot. Thank you, Zach, Patrick, and Dexter. As far as what's coming up, next month is Pixel Pop. September. It's August, September. I have no sense of time, you all are figuring out. September 14th and 15th is Pixel Pop. Let's see. Keep an eye on stlgamedev.com. Follow the Twitter, the Facebook, or the Meetup group, whichever kind of works for you, to see whatever events we are hosting next. We have to clear out of here by 9, but I mean, feel free to mingle like downstairs, trade stickers if you're following their networking strat. Yes.
So we're sponsoring a Pixel Pop party.
Yes, we are sponsoring one of the Pixel Pop after parties. I believe it's the Saturday after party. Pixel Pop is still kind of on their social media schedule to announce details for that. So those details will be coming out
We
soon.
have signups for demoing.
And we do have a Google Sheet. It's on the Facebook. I'll repost it on the Twitter. Also, if you would like to demo a game at Pixel Pop, we have a STL Game Dev table set aside, and so you can tell us about your game, and then we'll figure out shifts based on who wants to use that table to show off your game. It's a big part of the process of making games, releasing them, and getting to show them. It's definitely something you want to practice, even if you don't feel like you're at a stage. A lot of people hold back. They think, I don't deserve to show my game yet. You absolutely deserve to get the practice, though, and this is the perfect setup for doing that sort of thing. So that info is there, and I'll reshare it also on the social media. Any other announcements? Awesome. Thank you for coming. We'll see you at the next event.